this is my review of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Okay, so in this episode, interestingly enough, Jotaro and Josuke wind up going hunting, as the episode states. So, as it turns out, Otoishi had accidentally shot a rat with a bow and arrow at one point, and it didn't die, which means it's now a stand user. And because Jotaro knows from reading a survival guide that he reveals he reads later in the episode, he knows that rats are territorial creatures, and now that it's a stand user, it's going to be even more territorial and even more emboldened, because now it can get rid of anything that's in its way and take over whatever territory it wants. So they quickly realize they need to find it, and based on what kind of rat Otoishi describes it to be, they decide to track it to. Proceed to track it to a sewage drain, and on the way there, Jotaro teaches Josuke how to fire ammunition with his stand, which effectively increases the range of what would normally be close range stands. So, yeah, that's a pretty cool little trick that Jotaro picked up. He knows how to fire. He figured out that he can extend his stand's range by firing live ammunition, and by doing so is able to hit stand users that would normally be out of his range. And he teaches Josuke this as well. And while Josuke isn't able to hit all of the soda cans that Jotaro sets up for him, he is accurate enough to at the very least hit one. So Jotaro realizes that he's most likely good enough to hit them, and they proceed to go on their way. But he also points out that they're not going to get another chance if he misses. So he needs to be extremely careful, especially since this rat is a stand user, and stand users can be particularly dangerous. So, but in case they do wind up tracking it to that sewage system, like I said, and most likely realize that it's making its nest at the end of wherever the sewage system is. But while they're setting up bait and stuff to actually trap the rat and keep it cornered and keep it from getting away, Josuke notices a bunch of flies gathering in a certain spot nearby, and to his horror discovers an entire colony of rats melted together into a giant cube. And Jotaro, after seeing this, concludes that the rat stand most likely was responsible for this and has the ability to melt flesh. So, yeah, pretty dangerous. And so Jotaro had every reason to be worried. This stand is incredibly dangerous, and if they don't take out the rat quickly, it is going to cause problems. So, and fearing the worst, Jotaro then proceeds to calculate where the sewage system most likely lets out, and eventually they follow it to an old farm. And Jotaro quickly realizes that something is off because he can't find any livestock or people on the farm when they're supposed to be. So they head inside the farm and quickly realize that it's empty. And the two split up. Jotaro will look in one half of the house, and Josuke will look in the other half of the house. And as Josuke proceeds to search the house, he winds up in the kitchen, where he discovers something is digging through the refrigerator, and sure enough, discovers the rat. Which seems a little bit too confident in the fact that it can just loot the refrigerator without problems. And also, to his horror, he discovers the owners of the farm fused together into a pile of flesh in the refrigerator after the rat opens it enough, and quickly realizes that the rat most likely did this so that it would not only have a food supply, but would also be able to open up basically it has a food supply now because it's eating the people alive, but also it now has its own territory and it's basically occupied a house. So, yeah, this rat is set for life because it has a stand. Rats don't need to eat a whole lot, but because it used its stand to basically make its own food supply using the people that used to live there, it was basically able to just take over a house, and that's pretty terrifying. But in case Josuke, despite being under tremendous pressure due to the fact that if he knows that if he misses, he's not going to get another chance, proceeds to try and get into a good position where he can actually shoot it. And the rat notices him and notices that he's moving, but it gets shot anyway because Josuke was able to hit it. At which point, but it's not a fatal wound, at which point the rat summons its stand, aptly named Rat, as in the band, and uses Rat to open fire on Josuke as Josuke proceeds to chase after it and try to shoot it again. And the two fire at the exact same time. Josuke hits it, fires at it with one of his BBs that he has, and the rat fires at it with its own stand, which is revealed to be a mobile artillery. And Josuke is able to stop the needle that it fires with the bullet that it fires with a frying pan, and to his relief he manages to hit the rat. And at which point Jotaro comes back and Josuke reveals the good news, only for it to be revealed that Jotaro had gotten hit by another rat with a different ability, with the same ability as Josuke was dealing with it. And sure enough, they call up the Speedwagon Foundation after concluding their theories and after Josuke heals him up. And as it turns out, Otoishi lied. He said that he only hit one rat, but as a matter of fact, he hit two. So, and sure enough, they quickly realize that the other rat, which they decide to name Bug Bitten after seeing it in the camera, and proceed to go stake out their location. And as it turns out, it was not only incredibly smart as to not set off any of the traps, but it also managed to knock the camera off of its pedestal and proceed to escape. So it knew it was being watched, and it didn't like that very much. But in case Jotaro and Josuke proceed to chase after Flea Bitten after examining its tracks, and proceed to chase it follow it to a nearby gorge, which Josuke notably isn't too happy about because they have to pass through a puddle to get there. And as it turns out, the puddle has leeches, and Josuke took his socks and shoes off to avoid them getting wet. But after he finds out there are leeches in there, he drops them in the water and realizes that now he's most likely has been bitten by leeches, and he no longer has any shoes. But in case, they track it to the gorge but then are thrown for a loop when the tracks just suddenly stop. And they quickly realize that they've been had, and that the rat most likely backtracked. Although Jotaro points out that he doesn't entirely know that a rat could backtrack at all. So, and this is news to him. At which point they realize that the rat could literally be anywhere and hide behind a rock to try and avoid getting shot. At which point Josuke notices something strange and out of the ordinary behind the rock and proceeds to reach over to it, only for it to be revealed that the rat actually took one of the traps to pique somebody's curiosity and get them into a position where it can shoot them. And sure enough, Josuke grabs a trap, doesn't realize it's a trap, gets snapped by the trap, his hand gets injured, and he leaps out in pain. At which point the rat opens fire with rat. So, and sure enough, Josuke gets shot. And if it wasn't for Star Platinum's The World ability, which it's revealed he started calling it Star Platinum The World as ability, but he uses Star Platinum. If it wasn't for Star Platinum, Josuke would have gotten melted and died. But thanks to Jotaro, they were able to extract the bullet before it caused any significant damage, as well as the infected area around it. So Josuke needs to put a band-aid on it when he gets home, but he's largely fine. But in case Jotaro, realizing the situation, realizes that he needs to find a way to actually draw the stand's fire so that Josuke can actually land damage on it, and in the process gives him some more high caliber rounds that he added, pointing out that he brought those around mainly because he realized that round bearings aren't really aerodynamic, and that this is a much better way of dealing with the rat. And sure enough, Josuke has to figure out a way to shoot the rat before it actually kills Jotaro. And the rat is smart, so he has to do that quickly. Since the rat has quickly figured out that Jotaro is able to dodge and has started to use to recalibrate its stand and its firing range accordingly, so that Jotaro is basically always going to be shot at, regardless. And sure enough, Jotaro is, despite using Star Platinum's ability to stop time to avoid the stand's initial fire, is still hit by the ricochet damage and melts anyway, and slowly starts to melt. At which point Josuke finally locates the rat and opens and realizes that it's a very small window, but he realizes he needs to fire anyway, and fires one of the rounds that he has. At which point the rat and sure enough he misses because the rat is hiding behind a rock. But he manages to get the rat's attention so that Josuke can actually finish it off, because the rat notices Josuke, looks in his direction, and goes into a position where it can actually see him better and actually get a better shot. But in the process, it accidentally leaves itself exposed, enabling Josuke to finally finish it off. So yeah. That episode was basically just them dealing with two rats that have a very similar ability, and we already knew that animals could develop stands, but the fact that animals that don't particularly have a higher degree of intelligence can develop stands and then use them for their own selfish purposes, that's what this episode is to establish. Because we've seen that stand users can particularly usually work under a certain person, namely Dio, since we saw two animals working under him. But this is the first time we've seen an animal stand user use its stand for its own selfish purposes and not really care about who's in its way. And that's a little bit terrifying, because if an animal develops a stand, decides to use it for its own purposes, there's not much else that a human stand user is going to be able. I was going to say a human, but even the two stand users in this episode that we saw were unable to keep up with this thing. So we're able to keep up with both of these things since they're very fast and nimble. It's dangerous because the stand user can barely keep up with an animal that has also developed a stand. So yeah, it could be potentially very dangerous if other animals down the line develop stands and theirs is far more threatening than rat. So we'll have to. So that's an interesting thing that this episode brings up, but it does also bring up the fact that Otoishi started shooting people with the bow and arrow to create stand users, and he created two rats that wield the same stand. So that implies that if two people are we've already seen this with the Darby brothers, but if two people are also shot with the same bow and arrow, they can also develop the same stand apparently. So that's an interesting piece of lore that I didn't think I was going to learn in this episode, but interesting it is. So yeah, that's my review of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. What did you guys think? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below, or over on my Discord server, link in the description. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, be sure to follow me on Facebook and on Twitter in the description below. And also, be sure to check out my Patreon in the description below as well. It's only a couple bucks a month. It really helps out, and you guys get access to a bunch of cool perks. I'm always saying thanks, so be sure to check this out in the description below as well. But in any case, thank you guys so much for watching, and also next time I will see you guys in the next video. Peace!